Step into the Timeless Tales library, where each story unfolds like a soft whisper, guiding you gently into a realm of restful calm. I'm Theodore, your host, and tonight I'll weave a tranquil tale to quiet your thoughts and lull you towards slumber. The Timeless Tales library thrives thanks to the support of listeners like you. If these stories bring you peace, please subscribe to help us keep crafting these serene escapes. As you cozy up, drop a comment below to share where you're tuning in from tonight, and tell us a destination you'd love a story to transport you to. Perhaps Melbourne, Santorini, the Amazon rainforest, or a starlit desert. Your dreams light the way for our little library's glow. This story is about a quiet evening in Baker Street, where Sherlock Holmes shares tales of his remarkable brother and a peculiar case involving a midnight summons, a mysterious translation, and the unraveling of secrets. All told in gentle tones by the fireside, inviting you to drift into peaceful sleep as the fog settles softly over London. Now close your eyes and take a deep breath, letting the worries of the day unroll and flatten out. You are entering the Golden Scroll Room, a special chamber within the Timeless Tales library. This is a place for the oldest, most precious stories, tales written on scrolls of shimmering gold that glow with the warmth of a setting sun. The air is still, carrying a faint scent of old paper and quiet wisdom. Feel your body settle into the rich, soft fabric of your bed, your own personal alcove in this gilded room. Let the weight of your head, your arms, and your legs release. The golden glow of the scrolls fills the room, a gentle and comforting light that soothes your mind and body. Unroll the first scroll. Let the words drift into your thoughts like dust motes in a sunbeam, leading you toward a deep and peaceful rest. Fall asleep to Sherlock Holmes. The Case of the Greek Interpreter. The evening had drawn its velvet curtains across London, and in our rooms at 221B Baker Street, the world felt pleasantly distant, as if the bustling city beyond our windows had paused just for us, wrapping itself in a hush of twilight serenity. The fire in the hearth burned with a steady golden glow, its flames dancing in that mesmerizing way that seems designed by nature herself to induce contemplation and calm, each flicker casting soft shadows that played across the familiar furnishings like old friends whispering secrets. I had settled into my favourite armchair, the one whose leather had moulded itself over the years to the exact contours of comfort, its arms worn smooth from countless evenings just like this, cradling me now in an embrace that spoke of reliability and rest. I found myself in that delicious state between wakefulness and drowsiness, a place where thoughts drift like autumn leaves on a gentle stream, unhurried and free, carrying with them the faint echoes of the day's minor worries, dissolving them into nothingness. Sherlock Holmes sat across from me, his long form draped elegantly in his mouse-coloured dressing gown, the fabric falling in soft folds that caught the firelight and gave him an almost ethereal air, like a scholar from some ancient tapestry come to life. His pipe sent up lazy spirals of smoke that caught the firelight and transformed into ribbons of copper and gold, weaving patterns in the air that seemed to mirror the intricate workings of his mind. The room smelled of tobacco and old books, of the beeswax Mrs. Hudson used on the furniture with such meticulous care, polishing away the dust of the day until everything gleamed with a quiet luster, and of that indefinable scent that belongs only to a home where one feels truly at peace. a blend of wood smoke, aged paper, and the subtle warmth of companionship long shared. Outside, the sounds of London had softened to a lullaby, the sharp edges of the city's clamour dulled by the gathering dusk. The clatter of hansoms on the cobblestones seemed far away, muffled by the evening mist that was surely gathering in the streets below, turning the thoroughfares into dreamlike paths where lanterns glowed like distant stars. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled the hour with a sound so mellow and reassuring that it felt less like the marking of time and more like a gentle reminder that all was well with the world, its deep resonance vibrating through the air and settling into the bones like a soothing balm. The fog itself was a living thing tonight, creeping in from the Thames with its cool, damp fingers, enveloping the gas lamps in halos of diffused light, blurring the harsh lines of buildings into soft, indistinct shapes that invited the imagination to wander freely. Holmes had been unusually contemplative this evening, gazing into the fire with an expression of such serene thoughtfulness that I hesitated to disturb him, lest I shatter the fragile peace that hung in the room like a delicate web. His eyes, those sharp grey eyes that could pierce through deception in an instant, were now softened by the flames, reflecting back a warmth that spoke of inner reflection rather than outward scrutiny. But after a time he stirred, drew deeply on his pipe, exhaling a slow plume of smoke that rose languidly toward the ceiling, and spoke in that rich, measured voice that always seemed to carry with it the promise of fascinating revelations, each word placed with the precision of a master craftsman. "Watson," he said softly, his tone wrapping around the syllable like a comforting hand on the shoulder. "I have been thinking about family this evening. It is a curious thing, is it not? How we can share blood with another person and yet be so entirely different in our habits and pursuits. How the same lineage can produce one soul restless for action and another content in stillness, like branches from the same ancient tree reaching in opposite directions toward the sun." I murmured my agreement, feeling the warmth of the fire on my face, a gentle heat that seeped into my skin and loosened the knots of tension I hadn't even realized were there, and the profound comfort of familiar surroundings, the creak of the floorboards underfoot, the faint scent of Holmes's violin resin, lingering from an earlier practice, the way the curtains stirred ever so slightly in the draught from the window. Holmes so rarely spoke of personal matters that when he did, it felt like being admitted to a private gallery one had long wished to visit, a chamber of the heart usually kept under lock and key, now opened with a trusting turn of the handle. "I have a brother, you know," he continued, and his voice had taken on that storytelling quality that I had come to love, unhurried, reflective, like a guide leading you through a peaceful garden at dusk, pointing out the subtle beauties along the path, the way the light filters through leaves, the scent of blooming night flowers, the distant hum of bees settling for the evening. His name is Mycroft, and he is, in his own peculiar way, even more remarkable than I am, though he would never trouble himself to demonstrate it in the manner I do. Where I find exhilaration in the pursuit, in the dusty archives and the shadowed alleys, Mycroft prefers the quiet dominion of thought, reigning supreme from his favoured chair. The fire crackled softly, a sound like distant rainfall on a tin roof, comforting and rhythmic, and I found myself sinking deeper into my chair, lulled by the rhythm of Holmes's words and the hypnotic play of light and shadow on the walls, where portraits of long-forgotten ancestors seemed to nod in approval of the tale about to unfold. The shadows lengthened and shortened with each pop of the flames, creating a gentle ebb and flow that mirrored the rise and fall of my own breathing, slowing it to a peaceful cadence. Mycroft is 7 years my senior, Holmes went on, relighting his pipe, and his powers of observation exceed mine. I chase mysteries through mud and grime. He sits in his armchair, a spider at the web's centre, sifting whispers from embassies and political shifts to conclusions others need months to reach. Indolent yet indispensable, he advises the government unseen like a hidden hand on a ship's tiller. I heard the affection in his voice, warming me as the story wrapped around me like a soft blanket. Some years ago, Holmes continued softly, Mycroft brought me a case, unusual for him, but intriguing with its threads of greed and coercion. It began with a chance encounter. The room grew quieter. Closed my eyes, letting his words paint gentle pictures. There is the Diogenes Club, he said, founded for unsociable men who crave armchairs and silence. Speech is banned except in the stranger's room. Mycroft has belonged since its start, lost in newspapers by the window, a haven of solitude he seems made for. I could picture it perfectly, a sanctuary of silence, of high-backed chairs upholstered in deep green leather, worn to a soft patina from years of quiet occupancy. The rustle of turning pages the only sound, like dry leaves in an autumn breeze. Men in tailored suits, their faces hidden behind broadsheets, lost in worlds of their own making. It sounded in that moment like the most peaceful place in the world, a retreat from the clamour of life where one could simply be, without the demands of social nicety or forced conviviality. The thought of it lulled me further, my body relaxing into the chair as if it were a cloud drifting across a summer sky. One evening, Holmes went on gently, Mycroft met a member, Mr. Melas, a Greek interpreter fluent in Mediterranean tongues, honed in libraries and ports. In the stranger's room they spoke over tea, and Melas, trembling, shared a disturbing tale. Mycroft sensed trouble and brought it to me. The embers glowed warmly. Holmes's voice hummed close and comforting. Melas was mild-mannered, soft-spoken, a scholar with slipping spectacles. He translated contracts and manuscripts in quiet offices, safe, predictable work. I drifted on his words like a boat on calm water. But one midnight, Holmes said smoothly, a cloaked gentleman knocked at Melas's Bloomsbury door, demanding urgent translation for a foreign visitor. Intrigued by mystery and payment, Melas agreed and gathered his notebook. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked softly, each sound like a gentle heartbeat marking the peaceful passage of time, a metronome for the soul's descent into repose. I was aware of my breathing slowing, deepening, matching the measured cadence of Holmes's tale, inhaling the faint aroma of pipe smoke, exhaling the remnants of the day's cares. A carriage was waiting outside, Holmes continued, evoking the scene with vivid yet soothing detail. A comfortable, well-appointed brougham with curtained windows drawn tight against prying eyes, its lacquered sides gleaming faintly under the street lamp's glow. The horses stood patiently, their breath misting in the cool air, harnesses jingling softly as they shifted. Mr. Mellas climbed inside and found the gentleman who had summoned him already seated there, his posture rigid, his gloved hands clasped tightly in his lap. As the carriage pulled away into the foggy London night, the wheels rumbling over the cobblestones with a muffled thud, Mr. Mellas attempted polite conversation, inquiring about the nature of the work or the identity of the client. But his companion was strangely reticent, answering in monosyllables or not at all. He would not say where they were going, only that it was not far, and that Mr. Mellas would be handsomely paid for his trouble, his voice carrying an undercurrent of authority that brooked no further questions. I could see it all so clearly. The dark carriage moving through streets made soft and dreamlike by the fog, the clip-clop of hooves muffled and distant, echoing like a heartbeat in the enveloping mist, the amber glow of gas lamps appearing and disappearing like will-o'-the-wisps, casting fleeting illuminations on passers-by huddled in their coats, their faces pale blurs in the night. It was like something from a fairy tale, mysterious but not frightening, for I knew that Holmes's voice would guide me safely through whatever came next, navigating the twists with the surety of a lighthouse beam cutting through storm. The journey seemed to last a long time, Holmes said, drawing out the suspense in a way that was more lulling than alarming, though Mr. Mellas could not be certain, for the curtained windows prevented him from seeing where they were going, turning the world outside into a void of sound and sensation alone. The carriage turned and turned again, winding through the streets in what seemed like a deliberately confusing pattern, left onto a busy thoroughfare, right into a narrow alley, doubling back perhaps to shake off any imagined pursuit. The driver skillful in his evasions, the vehicle swaying gently like a cradle. Mr. Mellas felt the hours stretch, his mind wandering to thoughts of his warm bed and the book left open on his table, but curiosity kept him alert, his professional interest piqued by the secrecy. At last they stopped, the carriage coming to a halt with a soft creak of brakes, and Mr. Mellas was led into a house, a large quiet house that smelled of dust and disuse, as if it had stood empty for some time, its air heavy with the mustiness of neglect. Faint traces of lavender from long-forgotten sachets lingering in the corners. The door closed behind him with a definitive click, and he was guided through a hallway where portraits hung crookedly on the walls, their eyes seeming to follow his progress in the dim light of a carried lantern. He was brought to a drawing room, Holmes continued, his narrative flowing seamlessly, lit by a single lamp that cast long, gentle shadows across the walls, softening the edges of the furniture and creating an atmosphere of subdued intimacy. The furniture was covered with dust sheets, like sleeping ghosts draped in white, their forms bulky and indistinct, evoking a sense of suspended animation. Everything about the place spoke of absence and stillness. The faint creak of floorboards underfoot, the distant drip of a leaky faucet somewhere in the depths of the house, the way the air hung heavy and unmoving, and there, in a chair by the window, its curtains drawn against the night, sat a young man, a Greek, as Mr. Mellis could tell at once from his olive skin, dark curling hair, and the classical features that spoke of Hellenic heritage. But this young man was not as free as Mr. Mellis himself. His wrists bore the marks of recent binding, red welts that stood out against his pale skin, and there was about him an air of resignation and sorrow that touched the interpreter's heart. His eyes downcast, his shoulders slumped in weary defeat, yet retaining a spark of dignity that spoke of better days. I felt a wave of sympathy wash over me, gentle as a tide lapping at the shore, receding without disturbance, and I settled even more deeply into my chair, the leather sighing softly beneath me, knowing that Holmes would make everything right in the end, as he always did, his justice as inevitable as the dawn. Mr. Mellis was instructed to translate questions from the English gentlemen present. There were two of them, one tall and gaunt with a predatory smile, the other shorter and stockier, his face marked by a scar that twisted his expression into perpetual menace. To this young Greek man, and to render the responses back into English with precision and neutrality. The questions were about property, about deeds and signatures, about matters of inheritance and legal rights, probing inquiries into family estates in Greece, the location of documents, the willingness to affix a name to papers that would transfer vast wealth. The Greek young man answered wearily, his voice hoarse from disuse, or perhaps from earlier protests, and Mr. Mellis, translating faithfully at first, began to understand that something was very wrong. The man was being held against his will, pressured to sign documents he did not wish to sign, separated from someone he loved, a woman, Mr. Mellis gathered from fragmented phrases, who was also somewhere in this house, also a prisoner of circumstance. Her presence a lever used to break his resistance. The story was like a dream now, unfolding with that peculiar dream logic, where even troubling events feel distant and manageable, observed rather than experienced, the edges blurred by the haze of Holmes's soothing delivery. His voice wove through it all like a golden thread, keeping everything safe and contained, binding the narrative in layers of comfort. But Mr. Mellis, Holmes said, a note of quiet admiration entering his tone, was a clever man in his own right, and a kind one, his heart as attuned to human suffering as his ear to linguistic nuance. As he translated, he began to insert small warnings, tiny phrases that would alert the young Greek to his concern without being obvious to the captors. slips of the tongue that carried double meanings, idioms in Greek that conveyed solidarity and hope. And the young man, despite his despair, showed remarkable courage, his responses growing bolder under the veil of translation. Through the translation, he managed to communicate essential information: his name, which was Pulchratides, and the fact that he and his sister Sophie were being held by men who wished to steal their inheritance, a fortune tied to family lands in Athens and investments scattered across Europe. He spoke of a journey from Greece, lured by false promises, of starvation used as a tool to weaken resolve, of a face drawn on a window with a burnt stick in a desperate bid for help that had gone unnoticed. The room had grown quite dark now, with only the faint glow of the embers to light it, pulsing softly like a sleeping heart, and I felt cocooned in warmth and safety, listening to Holmes's story as one might listen to a beloved lullaby, its melody familiar and reassuring. Eventually, Holmes continued, his voice growing even softer, a murmur that blended with the night's embrace. The session ended, the questions exhausted for the moment, the captors satisfied with the progress though far from their goal. Mr. Mellis was blindfolded for the return journey, a silk cloth tied gently but firmly over his eyes, driven through the foggy streets once more, the carriage retracing its labyrinthine path until the scents and sounds of familiar London returned. He was deposited back at his home with a generous payment, gold coins heavy in his palm, and a stern warning never to speak of what had occurred, the gentleman's voice dropping to a menacing whisper that lingered in Melas's ears like a shadow. But the experience had shaken him deeply, planting seeds of unease that blossomed into resolve. He could not let the matter rest. He knew that somewhere in London 2 people were in terrible danger, their lives hanging by a thread of coercion and greed, and he felt compelled to do something, though he had no idea what. His conscience a compass pointing toward action. That was when he spoke to my brother Mycroft at the Diogenes Club, pouring out the story in the stranger's room, and Mycroft, recognizing the potential for greater ramifications, perhaps ties to foreign interests or financial scandals, brought the case to me, enlisting my energies where his own sufficed for observation alone. I heard Holmes shift in his chair, the leather creaking softly, a sound as familiar and comforting as an old friend's voice, grounding me in the present even as the tale transported me elsewhere. The next part of the tale, Holmes said, anticipating my fading attention with gentle consideration, involves investigation and deduction, the tracing of clues and the piecing together of a puzzle. But I will spare you the tedious details, Watson, for this is an evening for peace and rest, not for the racing of pulses and the excitement of the chase. Know only that we delved into records of recent rentals on the city's outskirts, cross-referenced carriage hires with descriptions provided by Melas, and even placed discreet notices in newspapers that might draw out information from those who had seen the marked man, or the house with its drawn curtains. Suffice it to say that with Mycroft's assistance, his access to governmental ledgers and his network of informants, and the resources at his disposal, we were able to identify the house where Mr. Mellis had been taken. It was a rented property on the outskirts of London, in a secluded area near Wandsworth, temporarily occupied by men of dubious character. One a disgraced lawyer named Latimer, the other a brute named Wilson, both seeking to defraud the Cratide siblings of their rightful inheritance through forgery and force. The story was winding down now. I could feel it, moving toward its peaceful resolution, like a ship gliding into harbour at sunset, sails furled, anchors ready to drop into calm waters. We arrived at the house under cover of darkness, Holmes said, his words painting the climax in subdued hues. Myself, my brother Mycroft, who rarely left his club but made an exception for family honour, the stalwart Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard with a contingent of constables, and of course the brave Mr. Mellis, who insisted on accompanying us despite the danger, his sense of duty overriding fear. We approached quietly, the fog our ally, muffling our footsteps on the gravel path. The door yielded to Lestrade's shoulder, and we entered to find the place in disarray, drawers pulled open, papers scattered, as if the villains had fled in haste, sensing perhaps that their scheme had been discovered through some careless slip, a neighbour's curiosity, or a servant's loose tongue, and there, in a locked room at the rear of the house, its door barred from without, we found Paul Cratiades and his sister Sophie, weak from malnutrition and fright, their clothes dishevelled, their faces gaunt but lighting with hope at the sight of rescuers. They were alive and most importantly safe, the sister's hand clutching her brother's in a grip that spoke of unbreakable bond. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction settle over me, warm and complete, like the resolution of a beautiful piece of music, the final chord lingering in the air long after the notes have ceased. The Cratide siblings were reunited with their freedom and their inheritance, Holmes continued, his voice now barely above a whisper, a final caress before silence. The necessary legal steps taken swiftly to secure their properties and expose the fraud. The men who had sought to harm them, Latimer and Wilson, were eventually apprehended abroad in a dusty port in Italy, justice finding them as it always does in the end, patient and inexorable. And Mr. Mellis, our gentle Greek interpreter, returned to his quiet life of translation and dictionaries, enriched by the knowledge that he had played a crucial role in saving 2 innocent lives, perhaps finding in his dictionaries new words for courage and compassion. The fire had died to the faintest glow now, a mere suggestion of warmth in the hearth, and the room was filled with a darkness that felt not frightening but embracing, like being wrapped in soft dark velvet that absorbed all light and sound into peaceful void. Holmes's voice came to me as if from a great distance, though I knew he sat only a few feet away, his presence a steady constant. Mycroft returned to his Diogenes club, Holmes murmured, evoking the image of his brother sinking back into his armchair with a sigh of contentment. To his newspapers and his magnificent indolence, the the web of information spinning anew, and I returned here to Baker Street, to our comfortable rooms and our peaceful evenings by the fire, the violin waiting for a melancholy air or a lively reel, depending on the mood. The case was solved, the innocent was saved, and London continued on its way, the great city breathing steadily through the night, its countless souls sleeping safely in their beds, dreams weaving through the fog like threads in a tapestry. There was a long, peaceful silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock, each tick a soft affirmation of time's gentle march, and the occasional settling of the coals in the grate, a whisper of finality. I felt myself hovering on the very edge of sleep, balanced on that delicious threshold where the waking world and the world of dreams meet and blend, colours softening, thoughts dissolving into imagery. "You know, Watson," Holmes said, so softly now that his voice was like a thought rather than a sound drifting through the air like incense, "there is something profoundly comforting about the solution of a mystery. It is the restoration of order from chaos, the righting of wrongs, with the precision of a well-crafted key in a lock, the assurance that even in a world that can seem chaotic and uncertain, with its hidden motives and shadowed corners, there is always logic to be found, always justice to be served, always, in the end, a return to peace, the equilibrium that settles over the spirit like dew on morning grass." I wanted to agree, to say something in response, perhaps to share a reflection on brotherhood or the quiet heroism of ordinary men, but I found I could not quite form the words, my tongue heavy, my mind adrift. The story had done its work, weaving its spell with masterful subtlety, and I was drifting now, drifting down into the welcoming embrace of sleep, where the boundaries between tale and dreamer blur. "Rest now, old friend," I heard Holmes say, his voice the last thing I was aware of before sleep claimed me entirely, a benediction wrapped in fondness. "Rest in the knowledge that all is well, that the mysteries are solved and filed away like solved equations, that the fog outside keeps us safe and separate from the world's troubles, a soft barrier against the unknown, that the fire will burn through the night in memory if not in flame, and that tomorrow, when we wake, it will be to another peaceful day in our home at Baker Street, with Mrs. Hudson's breakfast waiting and the sun filtering through the curtains." And with those words, I surrendered to sleep, deep and dreamless and profoundly restful, knowing that I was safe, that all was well, and that the night would pass gently until morning came again, soft and golden, through the windows of 221B Baker Street, painting the room in hues of promise. The embers glowed their last in the darkness, a final spark winking out like a star at dawn, and London slept, its vast expanse a blanket of quiet under the watchful moon. In our rooms, two friends rested peacefully by the dying fire, the case of the Greek interpreter resolved and put away like a book returned to its shelf, there to remain as a memory of justice served and order restored, a chapter closed with satisfaction. The fog pressed softly against the windows, a gentle guardian keeping watch through the night, its tendrils curling like protective arms. The city's heartbeat slowed to its nocturnal rhythm, steady and sure, the distant chime of a clock tower marking the hours with benevolent indifference. In that peaceful, perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. World aligned, harmonies resolved, serenity absolute. Sleep came like a blessing, a gift freely given, and we accepted it gratefully, knowing we would wake refreshed for whatever the new day might bring. For now, only this: lingering warmth, soothing darkness, profound peace. The story settled gently on the soul. Rest now. All is well. The night is kind. Morning will come with fresh light. Tonight, only deep, healing sleep. Good night, dear friend. Good night.